Welcome to the deep dive. We're doing this session just for you, really digging into some material you sent over, aiming to get you the key insights, efficiently.
Yeah, getting you up to speed quickly.
Exactly. So today's topic is all about cloud adoption principles. We're going to build on some stuff we've discussed before in this series about the cloud landscape generally.
Right. We've been sort of navigating the whole enterprise cloud thing, and now it's time to zoom in on, what really guides the journey, the principles behind the decisions.
And for this, we're leaning on some great Medium articles by Darren Lester Dasbo, as he's known. He's a pretty renowned enterprise cloud architect.
Yeah, loads of experience. His stuff's really practical.
So our goal today is to really explain why these principles are so important for cloud adoption and maybe give you a concrete set you could start thinking about.
Sounds good.
Okay, so first things first. What exactly is a principle in this kind of context? Let's nail that down.
Well, Dasbo kicks off by looking at dictionary definitions, which is always a good starting point, right? So one is like a fundamental truth or proposition that serves as a foundation for belief or behavior, or for a chain of reasoning.
Okay, foundational truth. Makes sense.
Or, simpler maybe, a rule or belief governing one's behavior. Then there are slightly more technical ones, like a natural low, forming the basis for a working machine.
Interesting.
A fundamental quality determining the nature of something. So, several angles there.
Right, pretty broad concepts. How do we bring that into the world of enterprise architecture specifically?
Yeah, exactly. That's where something like TOGIAF is helpful, the Open Group Architecture Framework.
Yeah. Familiar with TOGIAF.
So it defines architecture principles as general rules and guidelines, intended to be enduring and seldom amended.
Enduring and seldom amended. Okay, so they stick around.
Right. That inform and support the way in which an organization sets about fulfilling its mission. So they're meant to be stable and linked directly to what the organization is trying to achieve.
Okay, that clarifies it. Now, I know Dasbo mentions this. Some people might just dismiss this kind of thing as, hand-wavy architecture mumbo-jumbo.
He does, yeah. And he strongly disagrees, and I think rightly so.
So what's the counter-argument? Why are they actually vital?
Well, they're really fundamental for making decisions efficiently. But not just efficiently, also consciously, consistently, and repeatably. You get reusable rationale.
Reusable rationale. I like that.
Think of it like this. You're choosing a new technology. The first question should always be, does this actually align with our architecture principles?
So it acts as a kind of filter.
Precisely. A crucial first filter. If the answer is no, you need to stop and ask some serious questions.
Okay, that makes sense. So beyond being a filter, what are the concrete benefits of having these principles agreed upon and written down?
There are quite a few, actually. First big one, alignment to strategic goals. If your principles genuinely reflect your business strategy,
Which they should.
which they absolutely should, then decisions following those principles are far less likely to pull you off course. They keep the tech aligned with the business aims.
Okay. Keeping tech and business strategy in sync. That's critical. What else?
Second, you get consistency across the organization, especially in big companies with lots of teams, right?
Yeah, things can diverge quickly.
Exactly. Principles act as, Dasbo calls them constraints or guardrails. They guide different teams towards similar solutions for similar problems, like convergent evolution, he says.
Convergent evolution. Interesting phrase. And the result of that is?
Well, you end up with a smaller set of products, more technology reuse, which is huge.
Definitely.
You build a stronger core set of skills because people are working on similar things. And ultimately, it's more cost efficient.
Fewer tools, more reuse, better skills, saves money. That sounds like a pretty compelling package.
It really is.
Yeah.
Then there's delegating design and decision making. This one's quite powerful. If the principles are well understood and embedded in the teams, you can actually trust architects and engineers to make more decisions locally within those boundaries.
So it empowers them.
Yes, exactly. And it means designs tend to be higher quality before they even hit formal governance because they're already aligned.
That could definitely speed things up. Avoid rework.
For sure.
Yeah.
And it links to the next point. More efficient documentation.
How does that work?
Well, remember we talked about documenting the why. If a decision was made because it aligns with Principle X.
And Principle X is the rationale.
Bingo. You don't need to write pages justifying it every single time. Just refer to the principle. Saves a lot of effort.
Smart. Makes documentation less of a chore, maybe.
Hopefully. And finally, the last big benefit DASBO highlights is streamlining of architecture governance.
Music to many ears, I imagine. Governance can be a bottleneck.
It certainly can be. But if you have clear principles, you can enable what he calls governance light.
Governance light.
Yeah, for decisions that clearly follow the principles, they can potentially get a faster approval, less scrutiny.
Okay.
But if a decision doesn't align, that's when it gets the heavy scrutiny. Why this way? What were the alternatives? What's the tech debt impact?
So it focuses the governance effort where it's most needed on the exceptions.
Exactly. Without principles, that kind of lighter touch governance is much, much harder to apply consistently.
Okay, so the benefits are clear. Strategy alignment, consistency, delegation, better docs, smoother governance. They're definitely not just fluff. So how do you actually create these things?
Right. DASBO makes a good point. Every organization needs its own principles, tailored to its context. But you don't need to reinvent the wheel entirely.
So borrowing or adapting good ones is okay.
Absolutely. He encourages it. Find good examples and adapt them. Now, for structuring them, he leans on the TOJF approach again.
Okay, and TOJF suggests specific components for a principle.
Yep. 4 key parts to make them clear and useful.
Let's break those down. What's the first one?
First, the name. Needs to be short, memorable, capture the essence, like a good headline.
Got it. Easy to refer to. Number 2.
The statement. This is the principle itself. Needs to be really succinct, unambiguous, no room for misinterpretation.
Clear and direct. Okay.
Third, the rationale. This is crucial. It explains why the principle exists, why follow it, what happens if you do, what are the expected consequences if you don't follow it.
So the justification and the stakes involved.
Precisely. And finally, number 4 is the implications. This covers the practical side effects. What else needs to happen because of this principle? Any planning required, any hidden pitfalls or gotcha.
Gotchas, right. The practical consequences. So name, statement, rationale, implications. Seems thorough.
It is. And DASBO adds some practical tips for the creation process itself.
Oh, yeah. Like what?
Well, involve lots of stakeholders, get wide buy-in early on. Otherwise, they might just get ignored.
Makes sense. People support what they help create.
Exactly. Also, get them formally approved, like by an architecture review board or similar body. Gives them teeth, authority.
Right. Makes them official.
And finally, document them clearly and make them super easy to find. Put them on your wiki, Confluence, wherever people look for information. Don't hide them away.
Visibility and authority. Yeah. Key steps. Now, DASBO mentioned principles being fractal. What does that mean? Different levels.
Yeah, exactly. Like patterns repeating at different scales. You can have really high-level enterprise architecture principles that apply across the whole business, tied to strategy.
Big picture stuff.
Then maybe technology principles guiding your overall tech stack choices, and maybe even more specific ones, like data architecture principles for how you handle data.
Different layers of detail.
Right. And for our chat today on cloud adoption, we're mostly looking at cloud principles, which usually fit under that technology principles umbrella.
Okay, that sets the context nicely. So, focusing on those cloud principles, does DASBO offer a kind of starter set? Some common ones.
He does, yeah. He outlines 9 that he sees pretty consistently in well-run cloud environments. He stresses that the rationale and implications might differ between companies.
Sure. Context matters.
But the core principles themselves often overlap quite a bit.
Okay, let's hear them. What's the first one?
Principle 1. Host in public cloud. Pretty fundamental. The basic idea is default to using public cloud providers like AWS, Azure, GCP.
Prioritize public cloud. Why? What's the rationale?
It usually ties back to the benefits we often discuss in strategy talks, right?
Right.
Scalability, agility, shifting CapEx to OpEx, potential cost savings, the usual suspects.
The core cloud value proposition.
Exactly. And the implications. Well, you need to build up organizational capability training is key. And you'll likely need to shift your operating model towards DevOps, SRE practices, figure out support.
Big operational shifts, potentially. Okay, number 2.
Use managed services. So instead of running your own database server on a VM, use the provider's managed database service like RDS or Azure SQL.
Offload the management burden.
Precisely. The rationale is huge. Reduces your operational overhead massively. No OS patching, fewer upgrades to manage yourself.
Frees up your team.
Right. Increases agility, makes automation easier, often simplifies high availability and disaster recovery, usually improves security. Plus, many are based on open source anyway.
Lots of operational wins there. Implications.
Organizational change again, potentially. Maybe less need for traditional DBAs or OS admins in some areas. Focus shifts to using the services. Retraining might be needed. And explaining the new model to dev teams is important.
Got it. Less infrastructure wrangling, more service consumption. What's principle 3?
Use cloud-native services.
Yeah.
Just pushes it further. Think serverless functions, container orchestration services built for the cloud. Use these for new stuff and maybe re-architect old apps if the ROI is there.
Going beyond just managed infrastructure to truly cloud-architected services.
Exactly. The rationale. Even greater agility, massively reduced operations, often no servers to even think about. You get loosely coupled systems, independent scaling, often scale to zero cost benefits.
Scale to zero.
Fault tolerance built in, good security, compliance features, powerful stuff.
But what are the implications? Sounds like there might be some trade-offs.
Definitely. Migrating existing apps often means significant re-architecture work.
Yeah.
That's a big one. And, there's the potential for vendor lock-in, although Dasbo argues it's not always a given or necessarily bad if managed.
Okay, so cloud native offers a lot, but requires potentially more upfront design change. Makes sense. Number 4.
Automate deployments and installs. Basically, used infrastructure as code, or IAC, for everything, right from the start.
Terraform, CloudFormation, Bicep, that kind of thing.
Yep, exactly those. The rationale is compelling.
Yeah.
Super fast deployments, minutes, not weeks. Infrastructure becomes part of your CI/CD pipeline.
Infrastructure in the pipeline. Key concept.
Absolutely. Enables rapid changes, easy rollbacks. You get repeatable, consistent deployments every time. It eliminates configuration drift, where environments slowly diverge from the design.
Oh yeah, drift is a killer.
IAC prevents that. Plus, the code is the documentation. It's version controlled. Reduces the need for separate low-level design docs sometimes, and it's fundamental for the next principle.
Ah, a prerequisite. Okay. Implications of adopting IAC first.
Mainly upskilling. Teams need to learn and get good with these IAC tools. It's a shift in skills.
A necessary shift, seems like. Okay, so what's principle 5, the one IAC enables?
Immutable infrastructure, or the famous cattle not kittens philosophy.
Right, cattle, not kittens. Or sometimes pets versus cattle. Explain that one.
Sure. The idea is, once infrastructure is deployed using IAC, you don't log in and change it manually. If you need to change, say, an updated version, you destroy the old resource and deploy a brand new one with the change.
You don't repair or modify in place.
Exactly. Treat your servers or resources like cattle in a herd, easily replaceable, not like unique hand-reared kittens or pets that need constant individual attention.
I like that analogy. What's the rationale? Why is replacing better than modifying?
It's generally easier and far more consistent to just redeploy via code than to try and patch or tweak a running system. It guarantees consistency. Every change is documented in the code, repeatable. Scaling becomes trivial, just deploy more cattle. It drastically reduces human error from manual changes, and recovery is faster, just redeploy.
Seems much more robust. Implications?
The big one is you absolutely need a strong SRE, site reliability engineering culture. Good monitoring, health checks, alerting, SLOs. That becomes critical because you're relying on automation and quick replacement.
You need the monitoring to know when to replace the cattle.
Precisely. Okay, number 6.
Document everything. Sounds simple, but
Off falls by the wayside, right? The principle stresses comprehensive documentation. Architecture diagrams, design rationale, runbooks, everything.
why is this so critical here?
Knowledge capture is key, especially with team changes. Makes onboarding smoother. People need to understand why things were built a certain way. And it's crucial for support and troubleshooting later. We've talked about good docs before. It's vital.
True. Implications are probably obvious.
Yeah, training people on how to document well and having the right tools, wikis, knowledge bases easily accessible, making it part of the culture.
Got it. Documentation discipline, number 7.
Manage lock-in. This one's about being realistic. Using all these great managed and native services does create some level of dependency on the cloud provider.
You can't ignore that.
Right. So the principle says you need to consciously consider this risk, weigh alternatives, understand what it would take to move away if you had to, maybe prioritize managed services based on open source tech where the exit path is clearer.
So use the services, but keep your eyes open about the dependencies.
Exactly. The implication is ongoing evaluation of the tech you rely on, thinking about exit strategies, maybe negotiating contracts for more flexibility.
A pragmatic approach. Okay, number 8.
Systemic FinOps, financial operations. Basically embedding cost management and optimization throughout the entire cloud lifecycle.
Making cost everyone's responsibility, not just finances.
Pretty much. It's about using actual usage data, to make decisions. Giving teams visibility into what their stuff costs, which motivates them to be more efficient. Continuous assessment and optimization.
Why is this a principle? Cost is always important, no?
It is, but in the cloud, with its pay-as-you-go models, costs can escalate quickly if not watched. FinOps provides the framework to control that proactively.
Makes sense. Implications of bringing in FinOps.
It can mean decentralizing some financial oversight. Definitely a shift from CapEx to OpEx thinking. You need good cost visibility tools. And often, establishing a dedicated FinOps function or capability within the organization helps drive it.
So tooling, process, maybe people changes. Right. Last one, number 9.
Avoid commercially licensed software. This one can be a bit more context dependent, but the general idea is to favor open source alternatives where feasible.
Why? What's the typical rationale?
Often comes down to licensing costs, which can get complicated and expensive in elastic cloud environments. Also, avoiding license management complexity. Open source can offer more flexibility sometimes, integrating better with automated pipelines and cloud-native patterns.
Okay. Implications.
Might mean teams need to build skills in different open source stacks. And you need to think carefully about support models for open source components, whether community or commercial support.
So weigh the cost and flexibility benefits against skills and support needs.
Exactly. It's a balancing act, like many of these.
Wow. Okay. That's a really solid set of 9 principles. Host in public cloud, use managed services, use cloud native, automate everything, immutable infrastructure, document everything, manage lock-in, systemic FinOps, and avoid commercial licenses where possible.
Yeah, it covers a lot of ground, from the foundational choices to operational realities like cost and documentation.
So wrapping this up, the core message seems clear. Principles aren't just nice to haves, they're essential guide rails.
Absolutely. They provide that critical link between strategy and execution, drive consistency, efficiency, help manage risk, all those benefits we discussed.
And this set from DASBO gives a fantastic starting point, even if you need to tweak the rationale or implications for your own specific situation.
Definitely. You don't need to start with a blank page, which is always daunting. Adapt these, discuss them, make them your own.
So for you listening, maybe the takeaway is to really think, which of these principles hits home the most right now? Where are your biggest challenges in cloud adoption?
Yeah, and what's one small step you could take this week to start defining or even just discussing a relevant principle within your team or organization?
That's a great actionable thought. Start the conversation. Explore what these mean for you. Don't just let cloud adoption happen. Guide it consciously.
Well said. And interestingly, it looks like DASBO's next articles might tackle mapping your current as-is tech to the future to be in the cloud.
The practical next step after setting principles. Makes sense.
Should be interesting.
Definitely something to look out for. Well, thanks for walking through these principles with us today. Really valuable stuff.
My pleasure. Good discussion.
Okay, that's it for this deep dive. Until next time.